She stood at the altar in front of 200 people, 8 months pregnant, wearing the white dress everyone said made her glow. The music had stopped. The room had gone silent. And then she opened her mouth and said the words that would shatter everything. "I can't marry you. Not after what I saw last night." The groom's face went pale. Her mother gasped. And in the third row, her cousin started to cry. This is the story of a woman who had to choose between the life everyone expected her to live and the truth no one wanted her to tell. Hello, friends. Before we dive deeper, welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Florida, United Kingdom, maybe South Africa or Jamaica. We want to know. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story about a wedding that never happened. It's about the moment when silence becomes more dangerous than the truth, when loyalty to others costs you loyalty to yourself, and when the hardest thing you'll ever do is stand up in front of everyone you love and say what they don't want to hear. So stay close, because this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust, family, and what it means to be brave when your whole world is watching. Here's what made this moment so devastating. The man standing at that altar wasn't a stranger. He was someone her family adored, someone who had been welcomed into every holiday dinner, every birthday party, every moment that mattered. He was the answer to prayers her mother had been whispering for years. And the woman in the third row, the one crying as the truth came out, wasn't just any guest. She was blood. She was the cousin who had held her hand through every hard moment of her life, who had been there the night she found out she was pregnant, who had helped her pick out that very dress. So how does betrayal this deep even happen? How do two people you trust more than anyone else in the world look you in the eye every single day while hiding something that could destroy you? And more importantly, how do you find the strength to speak up when doing so means losing almost everything? Her name for this story is Sarah. She was 34 when this happened, which might not sound significant until you understand what those years had meant for her. She'd spent her 20s building a career, traveling, figuring out who she was outside of what people expected. She'd had relationships that didn't work out, moments where she wondered if she'd waited too long, nights when her mother's voice echoed in her head, asking when she'd finally settle down. And then at 33, she met Daniel. He was different from the men she'd dated before, steady, reliable, the kind of person who showed up when he said he would, who remembered the small things, who made her feel like maybe she hadn't been wrong to wait. Her family loved him instantly. Her father, who was hard to impress, called him a good man. Her mother started planning the wedding before there was even a ring. And her cousin Jessica, who'd been her closest friend since childhood, told her she'd finally found the one. When Sarah got pregnant 6 months into the relationship, there was a moment of panic, sure, but Daniel proposed 2 weeks later, and suddenly everything felt like it was falling into place. The wedding was set for late spring, just before the baby was due. It was going to be small, intimate, exactly what she wanted. Jessica offered to help with everything: the planning, the decorations, the endless details that come with trying to organize a celebration while growing a human being inside you. And Sarah, grateful and exhausted, let her. She trusted Jessica. She trusted Daniel. She trusted that the life she was building was real. The night before the wedding, Sarah couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves exactly, though there was some of that. It was the baby. At 8 months, sleep was a negotiation, a constant shifting of pillows and positions, trying to find some angle where her back didn't ache and her stomach wasn't pressed against her lungs. Around 2 in the morning, she gave up and decided to get some water. The house was quiet. Her mother had insisted they all stay together the night before the ceremony, some tradition about the bride not being alone, so the guest rooms were full. Daniel was supposed to be staying at a hotel with his groomsmen, keeping with the old custom of not seeing the bride before the wedding. But as Sarah walked down the hallway, she heard something that stopped her cold. A voice, low, muffled, coming from one of the guest rooms. At first, she thought maybe someone was on the phone. Couldn't sleep either. But then she heard laughter. Soft, intimate, the kind of sound that doesn't belong to a phone call in the middle of the night. Her heart started pounding. She moved closer to the door, her hand instinctively going to her stomach as if to protect the baby from whatever was coming. And then she heard it clearly, Daniel's voice, and Jessica's. She stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, trying to make sense of what she was hearing, trying to convince herself there was some explanation that didn't mean what her gut was screaming at her it meant. Then the door opened. Not because she knocked, because Jessica was leaving. And when their eyes met in that hallway, in the darkness, there was no confusion about what was happening. Jessica's face went white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And behind her, visible through the half-open door, was Daniel, frozen, still in bed, staring at Sarah like he'd just watched his entire life collapse. What do you do in that moment? When the two people you trusted most in the world are standing in front of you, caught in a betrayal so complete it rewrites your entire reality? Sarah didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, one hand on her pregnant stomach, staring at them both, trying to understand how this was possible. Jessica started talking first, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. It wasn't what it looked like. They were just talking. It was a mistake. It only happened once. But Sarah could see the truth in her eyes, could hear it in the way Daniel still hadn't said a single word. This wasn't once. This wasn't a mistake. This had been happening for a while, maybe the whole time. She turned and walked back to her room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. The wedding was in 10 hours. Her dress was hanging on the back of the door. The cake had been delivered. 200 people were going to show up expecting a celebration. Her mother had been planning this for months. The baby moved inside her, a gentle roll that reminded her this wasn't just about her anymore. Every decision she made now would affect this child. If she called off the wedding, there would be questions, shame, her family's disappointment, whispers that would follow her for years. People would say she overreacted, that she should have forgiven him, that cold feet were normal and she just panicked. But if she went through with it, if she stood at that altar and married him anyway, what was she teaching her child? That betrayal is acceptable if it's inconvenient to confront? That you swallow your truth to keep others comfortable? That love means letting people hurt you as long as they apologize? Morning came. Her mother knocked on the door, cheerful and oblivious, asking if she was ready. Sarah didn't tell her. She got dressed. She let them do her hair and makeup. She smiled in the photos. And when the music started and it was time to walk down the aisle, she did. Every step felt surreal, like she was watching herself from somewhere far away. The guests stood. Her father squeezed her arm, proud, emotional. Daniel stood at the altar looking pale but hopeful, like maybe she'd decided to let it go. Jessica was in the third row, her face tight with anxiety, praying Sarah would stay silent. And when Sarah reached the front, when the officiant asked if anyone objected to this union, she turned to face the crowd. "I do," she said. The room went completely still. Her mother's face crumpled in confusion. The officiant looked lost, and Sarah kept talking. Her voice was calm, clear, steady. She told them what she'd seen. She named the room. She named the time. She named Jessica. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse with anger. She just stated facts, the way you'd read a grocery list, and somehow that made it more devastating than any outburst could have been. Daniel tried to speak, to explain, but she held up her hand. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to tell the truth." Gas rippled through the rows. Her mother was crying. Jessica had her face in her hands, and Sarah looked at Daniel one last time. "I deserved better than this, and so does our child." She walked out of that church alone. No husband, no cousin by her side. No fairy tale ending. But with something far more valuable than any of that. She walked out with her dignity intact. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was brutal. Half the family took Daniel's side, said she humiliated him publicly, that she should have handled it privately. Jessica tried to apologize, sent letters and texts that Sarah never answered. Her mother begged her to reconsider, said every relationship has problems, that she was throwing away a future over one mistake. But Sarah knew something they didn't. She knew that silence would have been easier in that moment, but devastating for a lifetime. She knew that her child deserved to grow up watching a mother who valued herself enough to walk away from people who didn't. 3 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Alone in the hospital room, holding her daughter for the first time, she whispered, "I did this for you, so you'd never think betrayal is something you have to accept." And in that moment, she realized something profound. The bravest thing she'd ever done wasn't walking down that aisle. It was walking back up it and out the door. Because sometimes courage isn't about fighting for a relationship. It's about having the strength to walk away from one that's already broken. So let me ask you this. What would you have done in Sarah's place? Would you have stayed silent to avoid the humiliation, to keep the peace, to protect everyone's feelings but your own? Or would you have done what she did, stood up in front of everyone you love, and told a truth that would cost you almost everything? Think about it. Because the hardest truths we ever tell aren't the ones that hurt other people. They're the ones that force us to admit we deserve better than what we've been accepting. Comment below and tell me, could you have walked away? And if this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life and the truths you might be avoiding, subscribe to this channel. Because every week we bring you real stories about real people who faced impossible choices and found the courage to choose themselves. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss what happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things.